All right, welcome back everyone to Let's Talk Finances. I am Dr. Nina White. If you're joining live with us today, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching. Listen, over the last few episodes, we've been really building a solid foundation, talking about how money actually works in real life, not just in theory. We've covered budgeting, spending habits, how to create cash flow, and how that system makes sense in your lifestyle. Today, we're moving into a conversation that doesn't always feel very exciting, but it's definitely incredibly necessary and important. We're talking about financial protection. You heard me right, financial protection. Because real financial confidence isn't just about how much money comes in, it's about how prepared you are when something unexpected happens. So today we're going to focus on emergency reserves, what they are, why they matter at every single income level, how they quietly protect your plans, your progress, and your peace of mind. So like I tell you every week, get your pen and your pad, call your family and friends, get everyone in the room, and let's get started. So if you all remember, last week I talked about the cash flow optimization, and I mentioned about having emergency funds. So this is going to flow right back into it. Remember, some things may sound repetitive, but if you hear it over and over and over again, it'll start making sense to you and it will stay top of mind. Okay? So why does emergency funds matter? And remember, this is on any income level. A lot of people feel like if they're not making as much money, they don't need it. Only people need emergency funds are those who are high earners and making, a lot of money. And that's not true. It's absolutely not true. So a lot of things that I hear all the time, like I stated, emergency funds are only for people who are struggling. And if you thought that, listen, you're not alone. I hear it all the time, but it's not true. It's absolutely not true. I've worked with a lot of professionals, right, that are high earners and low income earners, and they're still struggling. They work the budget, they've done every single thing, but they're still struggling with everything that they're doing financially, right? So emergency funds are for people who are not just struggling. It's for everyone, right? Because we don't know what may happen. And you're not alone if this is something that you have thought about or anything like that, right? So let's talk about why it's important. Again, you feel financially stressed. Remember I told you about sometimes you have good stress and sometimes you have bad stress. So in this case, you may be like, I'm struggling. This is bad stress. How do I get out of that, right? The emergency funds, the emergency reserves. So you can call it either or. We're going to say emergency reserves. Last week I said emergency funds, right? So things that you want to think about, like, a commission-based professional who has a slow quarter. That happens. It happens to every professional. It happens to me. I have my slow day, I have my slow quarters, and I have my peak quarters, right? A business owner whose biggest client pays late. Now, for you professionals who got your own business, I know you're probably tired of chasing down someone who owes you money. And those could be the clients that actually have a very large invoice and they're not paying it. That now affects you, right? A family dealing with unexpected medical or personal situation. Remember last week, I told you all how, my brother transitioned last year and how I had a stroke. Those things were unexpected, right? So it doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It's just life. As the young people say, life be lifing. And in this case, that's what happens. But we want to be prepared. Remember, I've always been saying last couple weeks, You want to be ready so you don't have to get ready, okay? So don't just think that the emergency funds, oh, I'm struggling. Any level, it does not matter where you are. Everyone can have the emergency reserves. It's very important. This isn't the savings that we talked about with the 50-30-20 rule. This is not that. This is completely different. Completely different. So you got to have your 50-30-20. And remember, you got to get out of debt first before you can start saving. But then this is a whole nother fund, right? This is your emergency piece. This isn't the savings. So I don't want you all to get that misconstrued, okay? So without liquid reserves, even a strong financial plan can get kicked off track, right? It can happen. You get knocked off track when it's not even, in your financial plan. People start dipping into their retirement accounts, selling investments at the wrong time, or relying on credit, not because they planned poorly, but because they weren't protected. Remember, again, if you all are following me, I am telling you this. This is literally lining up step by step by step. I talked about this last week. I've talked about it the week before about making sure you know those numbers. And a lot of times when you're not prepared for something, what happens? We start using our credit card. Remember in the beginning, I was talking about the 50-30-20 rule, and I told you how flexible it was. So in this same situation, you got your, your 50%, your 30%, your 20%. But then your spending, your expenses are over that. But then you're trying to figure out where the money is. You don't have the money, so now you go pulling from your credit cards and using your credit cards for things. So this is what the emergency reserves is all about. So emergency funds, they act like a buffer, right? It acts like a buffer. It also protects your retirement. We do not want to start digging in things because listen, I don't deal with investments. I send people to the right person who does about it. But I know because I have investments. And if I want to pull, I know it's the wrong times that you don't supposed to pull from them. And then there's the right time. But when you're desperate and you don't have any liquid, you don't have any money, what do? You pull from it and now you're being penalized for things. Now, the stock market may up or down. You don't know, but you're like, I need this money, so you're pulling it, right? And so it's like a temporary situation that's turning into a long financial damage. That's what we're talking about. Again, knowing your numbers, setting your budgets, preparing yourself. You want to protect yourself in advance. Again, we all don't plan for emergencies. And we have to get to that place where we start planning for emergencies. Again, it's the mindset. It's that mindset. We have to change the way we think about money. So many times people think absolutely incorrectly when it comes to money. You got to start. When I tell you all to bring your family in, get your children involved, teach them early so that they can get understand it as they get older. I'm going to give you all an example of what I do for my own children. Okay, so for my kids, my oldest daughter is 20 years old and my baby boy is 7. Yep, pray for me. 20 and 7. Yep. I started all over again. But anyway, my daughter, I started teaching her about finances probably about 6 or 7 years old. And because I'm in finance, I want her to know. Again, I didn't want her to grow up like I did, struggling and things like that, which as a child, I didn't know we were struggling until I got grown and my mom told me. But I started educating her about finances. And so being that her birthday is 5 days after Christmas, what I started to tell her, because, people would give her money, for a birthday, Christmas, or just because she made an honor roll or whatever. So I told her, however much money you have by your birthday, I'll double it. And so she didn't really get the concept. So I would say to her by her birthday, how much money you got? And she'll say, oh, I got $10. So then I would give her $10. And so the next year, I would do the same thing. Ask her, well, how much money do you have? And she'll say, oh, I may have $5. Okay, then I'm giving her $5. I want to say about 10 years old, the light bulb went off for her. And so she said, Mommy, so every time my birthday comes, however much money, you're going to give me that same amount? I said, yeah. So another birthday comes around. I say, how much money do you have, Miracle? She said, $30. I gave her $30. The next year, same thing. Miracle, how much money you got? $100. I got to give her $100. So now she's in her teens and she's understanding it. Miracle, how much money you got? $300. I said, listen, it stops when you turn 18, okay? It stops when you turn 18. But I'm teaching her finances. I can look at my daughter's bank account and see money that she has in her savings. She may get some money and she'll put an X amount of money in her savings account and X amount of money in her checkings. She knows how to save. When she goes shopping, she looks for the clearance rack. She doesn't buy the most expensive thing. She literally knows how to do it. Now she's in college. She knows how to do everything. So I know that what I've taught her, when she gets on her own, gets her own place, she's not going to struggle because she understands the principle of finances and knows what to do. I'm doing the same thing with my son, but he won't let me put the money in the bank. He want to see his piggy bank. So that's what, until he gets to, grasp it, I'm saying, let me put your money in the bank. He's like, no. So he sees it. He wants to see it. Okay, no problem. But that's why I tell you, get your children involved as, parents. Even, again, business owners, get your top team in place. Let them know what the plans are, because sometimes you may be out. Case in point, I had a stroke. I wasn't in my office. I had to trust my team to be able to run things. So I've taught that to them, right? They know what to do. They understand it. So this is, again, that's that, understanding the finances. So you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself, protecting your investments, protecting your retirement, and protecting, the strategies you work hard to build. You want to make sure you're doing that. So now let's talk about what actually looks like, what it looks like in practice, right? So for most professionals and established households, emergency reserves should generally cover at least 6 months of your core obligations. You have to pay your basic household needs, right? We got mortgage, rent, we know this. You should have at least 6 months of that put away. So anybody ever you wanted to go rent a property? What do they tell you? Usually they say you got to have 3 times the income, right? Because they want to know that you can afford to pay the rent. So in this same case, you want to be able to have at least 6 months put up. See the difference between the savings that you're going to be putting away with the 50-30-20 versus the emergency reserves? It's 2 different things. So you want to have at least 6 months, because again, we never know what happens, right? We don't know if an emergency, if a family medical situation, unexpected, life changes, whatever, lose a job, anything, you want to have at least 6 months put up, because you can still, you can prepare, right? You got 6 months put away. Now, if you got to look for another job, you got some time to, look for jobs and, go on interviews until you find that right one. Transportation, your car might have broke down. You got 6 months. You're able to, this is the thing. You want to be able to have that put away, right? So again, like I said, it includes, household expenses, insurance premiums, right? We talked about that. As employers, business expenses, especially if you're self-employed, minimum debt payments that don't pause just because the income does, right? We got certain things that's got to get paid every month. They don't care that you're not working. They don't care that the revenue, there was a dip in your revenue. They don't care about that. They want their payment every single month. So again, these are the things that you want to include in that 6 month obligation, that portion that you want to put to the side. For professionals, when I say professionals, I'm talking about self-employed business owners, right? So just want to make sure that you all understand. So what I've seen before is people focus on the personal bills that, and they totally forget about the business expenses. That exists, in the slow periods. So they forget. And that is when the stress usually creeps up on you, right? Because I only put aside for personal. I forgot to put away for the business. So you got to make sure you do that. So business owners, take it from me. What I tell you all, I'm teaching you what I do. Don't make the mistake and don't put up for your business and you just want to put up for personal, because you never know what may happen. You might get slapped right in the face with something and you're not prepared. I tell you what I do. I teach this to every single person. You want to be prepared, right? Be ready so you don't have to get ready. So one thing that, that we want to also kind of focus in on about what the emergency funds should be, right? It should be easy to access. You want to be able to get to it, right? Highly liquid. And you definitely, if you don't get anything from this segment today, keep it separate from your investment accounts. Please do not put it with your investment accounts. You want to keep that completely separate. So this isn't growth money. This isn't money that you're, again, remember I told you about that 20% savings. This isn't that. This isn't money that's going to, you got interest on the account and it's building. That's not what this is. It's just stability money. That's all it is. It's money that you set aside for 6 months. Now don't go put the money under your bed, okay? Put it in the bank. But listen, this is for stability money. 6 months. I'm telling you, it's the beginning of the year. We got maybe like a week left. Well, Friday is B31st. But you still are in the beginning of the year. So you still can do this. A lot of people set resolutions. Remember, I told you all, don't set no resolution. Do a mindset shift, right? So you're still in the beginning. Just now you want to look at your money differently. Start thinking differently about your money. Remember, I always say it, your words have power. So you want to be very, very careful what you're doing. Give that money an assignment. Tell it what to do, right? Just like investments. We give it an assignment. We want a return on it. We go put some money away. We want to see it come back. Same thing, right? So definitely keep it separate. And this allows your long-term investments to keep working. That's why you want to keep it separate. And without you having to touch it with emotions on high. Remember I talked about reacting, emotional. You're reacting to something because you're not prepared for something. You're not prepared. So you're like, your emotions are all over the place and now you're just pulling. You don't want to do that, right? You absolutely do not want to do that. Y'all remember me talking about the CFO last week? We're going to talk about it again. The emergency funds for a CFO, right? Business owners, pay attention, listen, and even individuals. Remember I told you all last week, you don't have to be a corporation to think like a CFO. You absolutely do not, but you want to have the mindset. So when you look at this from a CFO mindset, emergency reserves are really about risk management. Remember me saying that last week? I'm telling you, go back. I want y'all to go back, constantly go back and watch these segments. You may have watched it, you're watching it now live, and you might miss something. Go back, definitely go back and watch it again. It helps stabilize the cash flow. That's that risk management. I talked about it last week. It reduces forced decisions. Again, we don't want to act out of emotion. And it's protecting your capital, right? But most importantly, they give you options. that risk management, it gives you option. When reserves are in place, you don't feel rushed. You don't feel boxed in, and you can actually think clearly, right? Before making any financial decisions. This is when I told y'all about that pausing. You remember listen, pause, take a moment. Let's reevaluate things. Let's look at everything. Let's look at, from A to Z, what we got to do, because you don't want to react off of emotions. So again, like I stated, it gives you clarity. You're able to think a whole lot clearer. You move from reacting in the moment to responding with strategy and confidence. And that will shift everything. Everything, everything happens. You just shift it. And so this is, again, knowing your numbers as individuals, as workers, even as people that are retired, self-employed, corporations, knowing your numbers. This is so important. These are the things that I want you to understand, right? We want to make sure that you're getting it. It's very, very, very important. So as I'll do a recap, I want to go back. So again, we got the financial protection, right? Which is the emergency reserves. You want to make sure that you're putting at least 6 months away, right? We want to change how we think about money. One thing I know for sure is if you think negatively about money, that's going to always happen. If you speak positivity, one thing I've learned, and one thing, that my pastor talks about all the time is, the power of words in our money. If you continue to say you're broke, you're going to be broke. If you start saying that you're rich, you're abundantly supplied, you're going to have these things, right? But you have what you say. So make sure that you're careful about what you talk about. Life and death is in the power of our tongue. I'm telling you, it is absolutely true. So we definitely want to be clear about that, right? Speak positive at all times about your money. Get your children involved. Get your family involved. Spouses, significant others, if you're living together. I want you all to go back and literally write down everything. I guarantee you all, as you have been following me over the last couple of weeks, you're probably saying, oh my goodness, I thought about that, or I never thought about that. I didn't know I can do that. I didn't know that was a way I can do this or that. And so now I'm educating you, and it's making sense to you of what you can do better, right? So therefore, you definitely want to, again, like I said, put those emergency reserves in place, right? Protect yourself. You want to make sure that, again, it's 6 months put away, right? And it's easy to access, right? Again, don't put it in there with your investments. Let it be separate, right? And we want to make sure that we're thinking clearly. We don't want to react out of emotion when an emergency comes up, an unplanned expense. We don't want to do that. So these are just a few nuggets that I'm dropping. Next week is going to be a continuation. And you all may say, if Dr. White keeps talking about this budget, can she go to something else? I will eventually. So if today's conversation made you realize you need to strengthen your emergency reserves, or if you're ready for a more structured CFO level financial planning, we love to support you at M&D Accounting Firm. And this is a special time right now because it's tax season. If you don't currently have a professional handling your taxes, or you're unsure whether your tax strategy truly aligns with your financial goals, we can definitely assist you with that. And one more thing, if you would like to book me to speak at your next event or conference, Or if you're ready to level up and schedule a one-on-one consultation, reach out to our office. One of our team members will be happy to assist you. You can call our office at 1-877-839-7778, or you can email us at contactus@mdaccounting.org, or you can text us at 1-844-436-2788. I am so grateful to have you tune in with us. I thank you so much for watching. I'm Dr. Nina White. Thank you for spending a part of your day with me at Let's Talk Finances, and I'll see you next Thursday.